Hey, what's up, everyone? Thanks for joining me. I thought I'd do a little track breakdown for my tune Discovery, which I just released on the latest EP, Daybreak. I actually learned a lot while producing the song, ran into quite a few problems that I didn't know how to solve at the time, but then I just went on good old YouTube and found a bunch of tutorials, and that is what has inspired me to go ahead and make a video like this to, pass on the knowledge and to hopefully create something useful for those of you who are working on your own tunes. Of course, if you have any specific questions, then drop me a DM or put a comment down below, and I'll do my best to answer your questions. So, yeah, let's get right into it. So, it's a really full session. You can see over here my computer is kind of like pretty high on the CPU meter right now. I have some of my plugins disabled, like Gulfast Master and Pro L, which has oversampling. I've just turned them off for the time being, just to help keep things manageable, because my computer is also recording video at this point in time. So yeah, this is the session, and the whole thing was produced in Ableton from start to finish. And if I collapse everything, then you can see that there is quite a lot going on. Just from top to bottom, we got the low end, where I've got the kick and the bass together in a bus. I've got the drums over here. This is the MIDI region for the Novation peak, which was responsible for the main lead line as well as for the bass line, and a few others. In fact, this is one of the first songs I produced after I got the Novation peak. And it always happens. You pick up a new piece of gear and it just produces a few songs just with the newness of the different sounds and the inspiration. And that's one of my favorite parts of buying some new equipment, synthesizers, guitars, whatever. But this song was definitely, it featured the peak really, really heavily. So we'll go through that. We've got the synth over here, synth bus over here. This is the MIDI region for the pads. A couple of plugins that I never froze. I should probably do that to help with the CPU. More synths, a couple of guitar tracks, one vocal bus, and then you have the ambient samples, more ambient samples, children's samples, a few more vocals, and then this bus that has not been used. So yeah, let's start from the top. I'm going to play the parts one by one, and of course, if you want to hear the whole song, you can check out the link in the description. So the first bus right on top is a bus called low end. Now, this is the new thing for me. I always used to have my kick with the rest of the drum kit in a separate bus, but at some point I came across this technique which advised that if you put the kick and the bass in a single bus and then put a compressor on them, followed by whatever other processing you find necessary, then it really helps just kind of unify the low end, and the whole low end of the entire song is coming from this one bus. So I'll just play it with and without the section. This is what it sounds like soloed. Right, so starting with the kick, pretty sure this was a sample, or maybe it came from the plugin Big Kick. But over here, yeah, we start off with some EQ, just to kind of tame some of the wild frequencies in the kick that I didn't want in there. I love this compressor from Plugin Alliance, the BX Townhouse. It emulates the SSL bus compressor pretty well. I've got Soothe in here with a bit of processing going on for the extreme sub as well as for the top end over here. So you can see it's basically doing work around the sub frequencies. The kick was a bit boomy, and so this is the option that I chose to fix that. Next up on the kick, we have Split EQ, which is a really useful plugin for particularly for low end and for drums, I found. And of course, it has so many other uses. But in this case, what I can do is separate the transient and the tonal parts and EQ them separately. So what I've done for the kick is just take the tonal part of the kick, which you can hear here if I solo it. So here, that's basically everything but the attack, and you have the attack separate, which is like a short punchy sound. So what I did is just boost the attack and cut the tonal part of around 60 hertz, so that I get that initial punch, but I don't have too much of that low-end information lingering because it tends to make things muddy. And after split EQ, there's Pro MB, which I'm using to just kind of like tame the higher frequencies. It's not really doing anything, to be honest, but it's just there. Okay, cool. And then, of course, Transient Master. I actually lowered the attack on this one. Let's see what it sounds like without that. And in context. Right. I found that it was actually helping it not be overwhelming by just reducing the attack. So next we have the bass, and there are a lot of plugins over here. I'm just gonna delete the ones I'm not using. Oops. Okay, here we go. So with the bass, I've used the Black Box saturation plugin. Really, really good plugin from Plugin Alliance. Using it to just give the bass a little more body. After that, we've got ProQ. Just pulling out some of those slightly annoying resonant frequencies in the bass. It's set on dynamic mode, so it's quite helpful. Got another bus compressor over here. Working pretty hard, this one. But with this bass line, I felt like the levels were kind of jumping pretty significantly, and I thought that was a good way to sort of solve that problem. Over here, I've used Shaperbox to create sort of like a synthetic sidechain almost. Right, so this is basically emulating the position of the kick. After Shaperbox, I've got Soothe 2 again. Working very, very softly, not really doing too much. There's a filter over here for later in the song, I believe, or rather for the beginning of the song. The filter sort of comes in slowly. Got Track Spacer here from the kick, which is giving us another sidechain. So this Track Spacer plugin over here is set to listen to this kick layer, so you can see what happens. Just another level of sidechaining. And then finally, ProQ, just to kind of take off the really low sub bass from the bass line, give us a little bit of a boost at 100, and then these pretty drastic cuts over here. And on the bus of the low end, we have the BX Townhouse compressor again. Looking at how there's three compressors in this bus, I don't know if I would do this that way again if I had to. It's just kind of happened. But I would look out for over compression if you're compressing your individual tracks and also the bus. So I worked on the session for many, many hours, and I don't even remember when I did this or how it happened, but it's definitely something to look out for. So yeah, so thankfully this compressor is pretty mild. It's not too aggressive. Everything is under 4 dB, so nothing too concerning over there. And then finally, the tape plugin from Softtube, which just kind of gives it some low end and low mid-range information, and that's the low end bus. I'll play it with everything on. You can see this bus compressor is working every time the kick hits, so to my ears it just kind of keeps the low end really nicely glued together, and this is the technique I found for now, which is working pretty well for me to keep the bass and the kick on a low end bus. We're moving on to the drum bus. Let's have a listen to that and see what it sounds like soloed. Right, so just starting off with the bus this time, let's take a look. Again, we've got Black Box, got a bit of saturation on all fronts, a little bit of raised output. Again, this bus compressor on the bus channel. It's not really doing much. It's pretty mild. There's neutron elements, not doing anything. Soothe 2. Again, not doing too much, just sort of active on the high end. Then I've got 2 more tape plugins. can hear with both the tape plugins, it just kind of like squashes things together, gives it a bit of high-end presence. And then finally, the U80 1176 LN, just to kind of like give the drum bus a little bit of glue and compression. For the individual tracks, some of the tracks have a lot of processing, some of them not so much. Let's check out this one snare, which has a lot going on, and without all the plugins. So I actually kind of like pull things back a lot, and you can see that there are a lot of plugins, but they're actually not doing that much on an individual level. But when you add it all together, I found that it makes quite a difference. So that's what that bus looks like. Sorry, that track for the snare. Next we have the hi-hat. Again, a little bit of tape on the hi-hat. Got a drum loop over here. Yep, this one is from Splice. Nice little simple hi-hat and clap kind of loop. There's this over here with a few small rapid hi-hats. Not much high-end information there. It's kind of just a little filler, I think. Then this perk layer, mostly the ghost notes in there. So if I just play this drum bass again, and if I turn all the bus plugins off, and on, you can see there's a lot going on in the bus. Part of the reason for that is also because I've been using this technique called top-down mixing, which basically means that pretty soon after I get my tracks in balance, I actually put a few plugins on the master bus, whether it's tape or this Pultec Pro EQ. Even though you can see it's really not doing much, just passing the audio through it makes it sound pretty good. I've got a Pro Q3 on the master bus as well, with the stereo section of the signal cut all the way up to 174, and you'll be surprised how much it actually cleans up the signal. Oops, didn't mean to delete that. And yeah, that takes care of the drums in the low end. So if we put those two buses together and listen. Moving on to the lead bus, we have these two recordings from the Novation Peak. Let's listen to what the lead bus sounds like. Okay, so let's take a look at this lead bus as well as the individual channels. This is what the two tracks sound like over here. And there's the second one. It's basically the same patch on the Peak, but with a few settings tweaked. It might have been the oscillator sync or some kind of additional modulation that I felt was just nice together. But let's take a look at this first layer. Got a filter which is going up and down. You can see the automation over here. Aside from this filter, there's a glue compressor. There's a Pro Q3 which is taming a lot of wild frequencies in this layer, depending on which frequencies they're hitting. This is a great saturation plugin. Just kind of helped it come through in the mix. Got a bit of tal chorus. Love this plugin. Give it a bit of width. And finally, Sketch Cassette, which is such a great plugin for just kind of helping sound settle into the mix a bit. So let me just play it with and without all of these plugins. Yep, it's sounding good. And if we go up to the lead bus, you can see there's a whole lot of stuff going on. Okay. So one of the reasons why I've allowed myself to use a lot of plugins, including multiple instances, as you can see, there's ProQ here once, twice, thrice, and is it there a fourth time? Yes, it is. And the reason is that if you need to make a change to a chain of plugins, and say you already have an EQ there in the front of the chain, it doesn't really make sense to me to go and say adjust the high end or low end on the first EQ in the chain, because that's going to affect the way the audio is going through everything. So I just tend to go ahead and put another one at the end and keep making incremental small changes with every plugin. It's pretty hungry on CPU, that's for sure, but my computer's all right at handling it, but it does lead to a bit of a situation when I'm getting towards the end of the song. As you can see, my Ableton is sort of, getting into the red zone, and it totally hits the red zone if I put on all the master bus plugins. But anyway, let's have a listen to what this sounds like without any of these lead bus plugins and without. And with. Yeah, so you can see there's a lot going on with the beat repeat and the processing and stuff. So if I turn off everything over here, that's what that sounds like. And turn it on. Like, it's not a huge difference, but it's pretty major, especially in the context of the rest of the mix. Let's move on to this other synth layer, which is more of a kind of airy atmospheric pads layer. Here's another patch from the peak, which came pretty early on in the song. Super nice. Valhalla vintage delay, tape mode, era past, really nice, slightly wobbly tail. Super nice. A couple of EQ plugins, so really not that much going on. I don't think it needed so much. Just a compressor on this bus again, just kind of managing the levels along with these other tracks as well. I'll just solo the bus. This layer over here, that's a guitar, and that's the peak again. Sometimes I like to create guitar patches that sound like synths and make synths sound like guitars, and when you combine them, it's pretty nice. So let's take a look at what I've done with this guitar. Just turn everything off once. Yikes. And there it is with everything on. Yeah, that's a whole lot better. And this peak lead layer, let me try turning this all off. Yep, nice and vibey. And then on the synth bus, yeah, we already covered that, not too much going on there. Over here there's this pads layer, which is the OP XAV from Arturia. It's a clone of the Oberheim. Really great for pads. Love the bundle from Arturia. And then we've got just this sort of like constant layer. And here I've got a sidechain pattern, but instead of actually doing it every quarter note, which would be like a kick sidechain, I've got it going every one bar. So there's some kind of ducking happening, but not in time with the kick. Then there's this bus over here called the pads bus, which sounds like this. Right, so these pads are actually from my Prophet 12. Yeah, well, what do you know, another synth actually made it onto this song. I've got two pads. One is again from the peak, which is this one. And there's this. The one thing I try to get in both the pads is this feeling of movement and modulation, so that they're not just like constant. And I think it actually like works pretty well overall. This one's also got an LFO over here panning the track. You can see those moving, and so all of them are basically moving around in one way or another. Here's another pad from the Prophet. All right. Next we have this guitar pluck rhythm track. We've got some panning automation over here, just to kind of like create some space, not let things get too crowded in the center image. Right. Next you have a little vocal sample, just doing little sounds like that. Here's another one. Right, let's have a listen to that with the rest of the tune. Pretty nice. On the vocal sample bus as well, I've got this DAW cassette plugin just to kind of like dirty things up a bit, I guess. And with it, yeah, gives it a little bit of grit because I pushed the inputs on the tape plugin, I think. Yep, inputs are way up there. And we have this ambient sample bus over here, which has a lot of stuff going on. A lot of samples that are just kind of like setting the mood before the song actually kicks in. You can hear what that bus sounds like. So I have this sample from Free Sound, I think, Outdoor Ambience. Just a handheld recording of someone sitting in a park. Got these birds over here. This patch from Farlight. So the stuff is all really soft, it's a bit subliminal. You don't really hear it unless you're listening closely, but I think it kind of affects the vibe of the song. And this bus called Child, as you may imagine, is the recordings of samples of children that I found again on Free Sound. Here's another one. Just a nice vibe. You hear kids laughing. Something about it just to create a nice little dreamy vibe in the song. That's what it sounds like without anything, and with the bus processing again. Nice. And looks like I never ended up using these two buses over here. And then finally, we can come back to the master bus, where I've got one instance of tape. I've got a UAD pull track, which actually makes a pretty amazing difference to the sound. Let me just play the tune with and without it. Right, so this is with it on, and this is with it off. I don't know if you can tell with the streaming on YouTube, but here in my studio, it just sounds a lot more open and a lot more mid-range harmonics in there. I've got tape as well. Let's listen to it without tape. And with it, it's subtle, but it's doing something nice. One thing that could be interesting is to listen to what I'm actually filtering out here by using the side EQ filter for the low end. Let's listen to this. All that stuff you can hear when I press this button is what would actually make it to the stereo field of your song. And I don't think that's necessarily a good thing, because low end in the stereo field can create all kinds of crazy problems with the phase and whatnot. And like I said earlier, I've got Gulf House Master off most of the time while working on this, while showing you guys this tune, because this is one hungry plugin, and you can see my CPU spiked up to 75%. But let me just try and show you what it sounds like with and without Gulfas Master. Okay, as you can see, my computer is hardly able to handle it along with the streaming and the video recording and everything, but Gulfas just does a really nice job of kind of opening up the stereo field, and it just kind of like does something about those little resonances that may come up in your mix that happen on a momentary basis. Really great plugin, super CPU hungry, but no complaints about that. That's all right. So yeah, that was a really quick run through of this tune. There's a lot that I just went through really fast, so feel free to hit me up if you have any questions or comments. Drop a comment below. Let me know if you have any questions or thoughts. And yeah, thanks for tuning in. See you next time.